shir is dedicated for the safety and protection of all the citizens of Israel, and for the success of the Chayalim on their operations, that they eliminate and destroy the enemy, return safely, and bring back the hostages safely.
Amen. With zero casualties on our side. Yeah.
Amen. Yes.
Got to be clear on this. All right, Kevin, teach us.
Okay, so this is just from this week's parsha, actually last week's parsha, this week's parsha, combination, and forgive me if I'm repeating myself. So it says Ishmael was born to Hagar because Abraham gave Sarah couldn't bear children, so Abraham wanted a child. So Hagar, the maidservant of Sarah, gave birth to Ishmael, and it says Ishmael will be a Pere Adam, which means Pere Adam, which means a wild ass of a man, or some people translate it a wild beast of a man, and says his hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand will be against him. And unfortunately, we see this. But just one thing I heard a share: not every person of that ethnicity is only the ones that are from Bnei Yishmael. Those are the ones that are involved in all the negativity. So not everyone from that ethnicity is from Bnei Yishmael. And there are, as I say, I don't want to say too much. I'm talking cryptically here. And then it further goes on to say that, what does it go? It further goes on to say, yes. So in this week's parsha, Avram is commanded to sacrifice Yitzchak on Har Moriah, and it says before he did things with alacrity. Got up very early in the morning, saddled his donkey, took Yitzchak with him, and he took his two men with him. Now the question, which is the burning question, which we ask every year, which I ask, one of those two men is Ishmael. Ishmael is his son. Why would it refer to a man? Why didn't he say he took his two sons with him? Yitzchak his son, Ishmael his son. Because it says spiritually and it's destined that the actual son, the main son, is Yitzchak. Okay, let's leave it at that.
Okay.
I think we should publicize all over the web. I think it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I personally prefer the term of Ishmael as being a wild ass, as opposed to
yes,
yeah. It covers both meanings of the word. All right, Arth, do you want to read the Mishnah? Just give me a sec, mate.
Yo, I can't see that. Let me turn my phone sideways.
I'll read it. I'm on a big screen here.
No. I want Arthur to, because he's in Eretz Yisrael, it gives him extra.
Okay, ready?
Yes, but Arthur can.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
On mobile.
Okay. Yeah. Just take that out the way there. Okay. The Mishnah continues discussion about the use of property that was stolen by another. One may not take change from the coin in the customs collection box, nor from the coins in the tax collection purse, nor may one take charity from them, but one may take from the coins the collector has in his house, or from the coins he carries in the street.
Okay, perfect, Arthur. So just Gabba, can you put your silence? You can't put on silent, I guess, because you're listening to the show. Notifications. All right. So, guys, just quickly, we learned in a very, very straightforward manner that what money are we talking about here? We're talking about the money issue isn't so straightforward. In other words, if you look at the Gemara, it says that what's this Bryce's modification according to the Mishnah's prohibition against taking change from the custom collector's box? Because a Tana taught in a Bryce, you remember learning this, that one who pays himself half a dinner can give him a whole dinner instead, and the collection gives them a change in coins of smaller denominations. So all it's saying is that if you coming with if you have to pay a tax of 20 Rand, for example, and you're coming with a 200 Rand note, if it's for taxation, you're entitled not to suffer a loss, and you are able to get the change back. And that contradicts our Mishnah, which basically said that you cannot take change from the coins in the custom collector's box, nor from the coins in the tax collector's purse. So tax collector deals with taxes collected on behalf of the king, whereas the custom collector, between provinces or between countries, there is customs duties, etc. And what does it mean you can't take charity from them? And why is there a contradiction between the Bryce and the Mishnah? So the Gemara finds difficulty with the Mishnah's premise that the money taken by a customs collector is stolen. Okay. And how do we know it's stolen? Otherwise, there'd be no issue taking your change. So the Gemara is going to ask that the reason why it's a problem is that how can money taken by custom collectors even be considered stolen? Because Shmuel has said the law of the kingdom is the law. Okay, what did we say that meant? That the Torah calls a Jewish or Gentile king with the right to impose laws on his people, including the assessment of taxes. The laws of the land are valid under halacha, and a Jew has a religious duty to do derech eretz and observe them, because that's the criteria of the country to pay taxes. Now, according to most authorities, that principle is not only rabbinic, but it also carries the force of biblical law. It obviously doesn't, however, contradict a law which is clearly mandated by the Torah. Okay, in other words, you'll never have a law of the land which contradicts halacha in terms of moral, ethical values. We follow the Torah first. And a prime example is that it says, honor your father and mother. However, if they tell you to do something contrary to the Torah, you do what is in the Torah. So too with this. So given that a king's halachic right to levy taxes, whether he's Jewish or not Jewish, he is fully entitled to the payments halachically, and they become his property. So consequently, one who evades payment of tax or of customs transgresses the biblical prohibition of theft, because he keeps the property of another. So that's the law of the kingdom is the law. So how can we feel that putting money in the tax box or getting change from the tax box is equivalent to dealing with money that is stolen? Well, although it's generally agreed that the principle of the law of the kingdom is the law, and it has the status of derisa, the Rishonim disagree as to its source. This is before we even deal with stolen money, because there's a view that understands the basis of this rule to be that all citizens of a country voluntarily accept to obey the king or the democratically elected party's edict to govern a country, and that assumes the status of a binding law. So what's this approach is that every society has a duty to self-regulate, which is one of the 7 Noahide laws, because you have to set up courts of law and make sure there's no anarchy. There's communal leaders, there's infrastructure, hospitals, schools looking after those that have retired or those that cannot fend for themselves, and this does take taxes. So the laws are binding on all the members of the country or the provinces, because you do have provincial taxes, even against their will, because it's part of the 7 Noahide laws. As long as those monies are used correctly in terms of taxes. If you remember, Gavin asked what to do in the South African situation. He knows my view on that. So some Rishonim maintain that this principle, the law of the kingdom, is the law in a slightly different way. And they say it stems from the fact that actually the land belongs to the king. What does that mean? Is that if you own property and you have a tenant, that tenant has to pay rent if they don't own the property. And what it's the sufferance that the people Gav, is that your phone all that time? Are you able to mute the messages just during the share, perhaps? Because it's going off.
I haven't had a lot going off. Is it only me or is it another phone?
No, but it's so super loud when it comes through on the group.
Put the volume on soft. It's all I can really do.
But then how will you hear me?
No, I won't put that one on soft.
Okay.
The other one.
Listen, it does interrupt a train of thought. Sorry, when you're giving a share and it comes through, it does. Sorry, but
I didn't hear anything on my side, but I'm just saying it's fun. I'll put it down anyway.
Sometimes when Arthur and I are speaking on the phone, and I put a pot down, he said, "What are you banging? That sounds so loud." So one probably it's not loud from your perspective, but it just comes through as rather loud.
No,
right? Can I continue, Gav?
It hasn't affected me hearing you, by the way. So if it does come through,
yeah. I'm just saying on the meeting side, it's loud. So anyway, listen, there are two views, guys. The one of it is the law of the land is the law. The other one is a king is considered like a landowner, and we are the tenants. And just like you pay rent to tenants, as a tenant you pay rent to your landlord, there you have to pay rent to your landlord. So the main issue comes that, well, what do people want to do that? Obviously not. You've got the feudal landlords, and you've got the serfs that by sufferance have to pay. Sometimes they pay with their labor and they work the land. They don't get to keep most of the proceeds. They just get to keep alive. The Middle Ages were not a fun time. They were a dark time. And anyway, what we're saying is here, well, does it apply to a Jewish king? Because according to a Jewish king, in the Durham 28a, every Jewish person is entitled to a share of Eretz Yisrael, not just the king at all. So in that case, how can he be considered the land owner? And that would go back to the previous source of no. The country is governed, and there happens to be a king, and there are various aspects of statehood, and those aspects have to do with the parliamentary system, the monarchy, the presidency, the judicial system, the Senate, Congress, etc., etc. Those are for taxes. So the one is the view of a landowner and a tenant, but that doesn't apply to a king in Eretz Yisrael who is Jewish, because all Jews are entitled to the land, but it does apply that you still have to pay your taxes. Gav, it's coming again and again.
It's not. I don't know.
I'm sorry, but I'm not being difficult.
I can't go any softer.
Unless you just put it on mute, and then when he needs to speak, he'll speak, Damon.
Yeah, that's
it.
good.
That Gavin.
I agree.
All right.
If you want to say something, just go off mute and go back on.
Yeah, well, Gavin has good things to say. That's why I didn't want to mute him permanently, but he unmuted if he has a question. So the bottom line of it here is, how do we go against the law of the kingdom is the law, meaning that we have a halachic obligation to keep the civil law of the country we are residing in. So according to that principle, the authority of the customs collector or tax collector, which was granted by the king or the presidency, should be recognized under Jewish law. And because why? It's common for kings to obtain their revenues by selling the privilege of collecting taxes. South African Revenue Services give to the government. It's an organization. in the olden days you had the king's army, but if a king's army was fighting wars, it would spread itself quite thin collecting taxes. So you had firms that used to collect taxes, and basically, say you were a mafia boss and you had 10 cronies with axes and weapons, clubs, etc. You would say to the king, listen, let me go and collect money for you in Glen Hazel, and I'll crease the skull and bash up whoever doesn't give you the money. And then you get to keep the taxes and I can keep a small percentage. So apparently that was the done way of doing it, although it wasn't a very nice way. And the king himself has the halachic authority to levy taxes. And since he lawfully extended this right to his agency or sold the right to another, the collector is fully entitled to the payments. So why does the Mishnah rule that his takings must be treated as stolen property? Very simple, because Rav Chanina bar Kahana said in the name of Shmuel, the Mishnah refers to a custom collector who has no limit on the amount of collects, meaning he takes as much as he pleases, which means there's chaos. It's certainly not meant to be, I mean, yes, there can be a forcefulness that you have a sheriff of the court, but the minute you have thugs governing it, we can be assured that the king doesn't get the correct amount, that probably this collector is keeping the majority for himself. The church is often used to collect and torture people, and that's certainly not allowed because there's not a standard fee in this type of case. What happens is when there's a collection, the tax collector will collect less from his friends and more from the Jewish people whom he doesn't like. It might be that different items need different levels of taxation. So, for example, we learned South Africa that there's special tax relief policy for maize and other staple foods, and you have alcohol and cigarettes, which gets additional taxes. But when it's chaos and there's a different rule book that applies, the minute the agent is collecting more than the arrangement that he had with the king, he no longer is in agreement with the king because the king would not be happy, and therefore he doesn't enjoy the extension of the authority of agency of the law of the kingdom. So there is no obligation to even pay him the authorized amount of taxes, and everything must be treated as stolen property. So that was Rav Chanina bar Kahana in the name of Shmuel. But there is an alternative answer. In the Academy of Rav Yanai, they said the Mishnah refers to a collector who appointed himself without the authority of the king. And that obviously is where it's completely illegitimate, like the mafia. So then you don't have to pay your taxes to that person, but you can certainly not allow it as a convenience to collect change. Even if you need tzedakah, you can't use it to collect tzedakah, because that evil, wicked person will say, listen, I also help the poor. I'm collecting millions, but I give like 10,000 rand to the poor, and they can come and collect where they need, a little bit here and there. And what that does do, like a laundromat, is it allows the criminal to think that he has laundered his sins and it's come out squeaky clean and shemaim, when in fact this person is a despicable human being, because you cannot flaunt Hashem's will and steal on one end and give tzedakah with those stolen funds. Hashem said don't steal. So the person that's poor must go to the gemach, and you can't get your change from a person where the money is suspected of being stolen as a depository system where you can change bigger currency into smaller denominations. However, if you have to pay taxes and you suspect some of the money being stolen, but you're not sure if for sure it is, and you're going to suffer a loss, in that case, the Brisa says you may take change, as long as there's still a potential where it isn't stolen. Now, by the way, in a case where those people were extracted money from them, that money, Kevin, is seen as stolen. So therefore, if the party that's been taxed hasn't given up on getting that money back, there's no Yeush. And since there's no Yeush, it's as if you're stealing it directly. Whereas if there is Yush and the person knows that they're not going to, he's a simple family man with 2 daughters and an entire brigade of men came to collect it that were fully armed, you can rest assured he probably has despaired of recovering the money, especially if the king himself doesn't really care for those that are poorer and weaker. And therefore, it's not considered as if you stole it, because they have your ush and you have a change of domain, okay, which is a which is a shino reshut, meaning it's a by dint of your ush and a change of domain, it actually is acquired by the tax collector, although not legitimately. Before Hashem, he owes the money and he should give it back. It doesn't have the authority of the king. But the person that uses it in order to get either his change back is not considered to have stolen it directly. And if there's a suspicion that it's all stolen, he can't even get the change back. But if it's possibly that some of the money is legitimate, he can. And furthermore, it's not direct theft. It's, according to Rashi, repugnant to get some sort of benefit out of stolen monies. So in that case, we don't do it. So that's pretty straightforward. Now, we were dealing with this issue last time. So according to the Academy of Rav Yanai, it's basically mafia that doesn't even have permission of the king. Now, just a note here is that when they say you don't even have to pay the taxes, I'd like to see how that person that's in his 60s and has got 10 men that are fully armed wanting the money from him, how he's going to refuse to pay those taxes. That I'd love to see. I don't know how that's going to work. But they say he doesn't have to if he can get away with it. So we're going to address that answer later. I know we went through the Kalaim issue. Does anybody have recall? Otherwise, I'll go through it again.
Which issue?
The Kalaim issue with evading taxes.
Lime, that's that plant that's, isn't it?
Yeah. So let me go through it just quickly in review. Is that there was a Mishnah in Kalaim chapter 9 verse 2, and guys, the context of Kalaim refers to garments in which wool and linen have been spun, woven, or sewn together. And we know that as shatnez, Kalaim is a broader term where it's not only what you wear, but what you grow together in terms of grains and grapes, etc. So the Torah prohibits the wearing of those garments and wears it, apart from in the Gemara of Kalaim. It's in Leviticus. Leviticus is Vayikra, chapter 19, verse 19. It's in Deuteronomy, which is Devarim, chapter 22, verse 11. This is as far as the wearing Kalaim is concerned, the shatnez. So you're not allowed to wear Kalaim. And it says, even on top of 10 garments in order to evade the customs with it. So what are we talking about here, guys? We're saying that customs were levied only on a merchant's goods, but not on his personal effects, like the clothes he's wearing. So what did we compare it to last time, guys? We said that you're at the airport. And at the airport, you allow 2 23-kilogram bags and an 8-kilogram carry-on luggage and a laptop. Now, what would happen is, say my bags were full and I was going for a long period of time to Israel, and I'm going into winter there, but it's the middle of summer in Johannesburg. Then what I would do is I'd schwitz just before I got in the plane and wear 15, 20 layers, because that wouldn't fit in my bag, and it's not part of the 23 kilograms. As soon as I'm sitting on the seat, I can take off my 10 jackets. Does that make sense? I can take them off. So what we are saying is that doesn't count as part of your weight contribution when you're taking that luggage on the airlines. Okay, so it's the same thing with Kalaim, is that you're not charged on tax if you're actually wearing a piece of clothing. It's only that which you carry. because it's seen as merchant goods and not personal effects that you're wearing. So it's possible, guys, to avoid paying the customs on a particular garment by wearing it. Okay? So that's one aspect. Now, there is a separate discussion and saying this doesn't refer to generally customs that you would pay in terms of taxes, but that there were special other taxes that were only imposed on Jews. And if a Jew had to wear kilayim, he would look like a Gentile, and he wouldn't be charged the Jew tax for being Jewish. Now, you know, is it allowed as a separate question to hide your Jewish identity in order to avoid taxes? Okay, so what it looks like on the surface is that one is forbidden under the law of Kilayim to wear the garment, even though his intent is only to avoid taxation of goods or the tax levied upon a Jew for being a Jew. And if he looks like a Goy, he doesn't have to pay the Jew tax. And he's not wearing it for his primary intent. Because if we look at Kilayim to wear, when you mixing wool and linen, that is the benefit to wear clothing, which means to keep you warm, protect you, and protect you from the elements, the cold, etc. Now, we are saying that sometimes does this other benefit count as a benefit? Meaning, okay. No, I know, but Rav Yisrael, we're doing a shir now, and I put it like that on one on purpose. Guys, just hang on a second.
First we
Yeah,
first we pay what due.
very funny. That's very cute. That's very impressive, mate. So, okay, so guys, the question is, if you don't use it for its intent, have you actually broken the prohibition? In other words, that's what's coming into play. Yeah, in other words, you are prevented from wearing.
I'm gonna share that. 10 minutes. Sorry, guys. Sorry.
No, it's okay. So what?
Just repeat. Say you said if your intent isn't to, if you had no intent to go against halacha about wearing kilayim, is that what you're saying? Are you still chayev? Or you still is that what you're saying?
I hear you. So this is the primary issue: is it if you're not using it for its usual purpose, is there a prohibition to wear kilayim? Because in order to, you're prohibited from getting benefit from a forbidden act. In essence, that's the issue. Does that make sense? In other words, what is the prohibition here?
Wearing.
Okay? The prohibition is wearing. If you're getting the benefit of the wearing, if you're getting benefit from a prohibited act, that you're not allowed to do. But the primary benefit from what we can see in definition is the wearing of kilayim. Does that make sense? It's not the same. You get different categories of benefit. The one is Pesach. So Pesach, you furtherly can't own chametz, even if you don't get benefit. But here, are you allowed to transgress something? Because the thing of it is, you cannot wear kilayim. Why? Because wearing is a benefit. What benefit is to keep you protected from the elements? But what happens with the secondary benefit? Because by wearing the kilayim, you're not paying taxes. You're evading taxes. You're actually evading taxes. But that's not a primary benefit. That's a second. What we see as a primary function of clothing is that the clothing itself is what's keeping you warm. That's the primary function of clothing. If you're not deriving the primary function, is it an issue of kilayim, even though there is a fringe benefit? where you don't pay the Jew tax because you're Jewish and you're identified as Jewish, and you're not if you're wearing kilayim, or the fact of it is that you don't pay tax on merchandise because you're seeing it wear in a personal capacity. Is that the problem? Are you still not allowed to wear kilayim on that particular basis? So let me just tell you what the Gemara says. In other words, if you're not getting any wearing benefit, which is the primary benefit of clothing, are you still forbidden to use kilayim, even with a second-hand fringe benefit? So the Gemara remarks, the Mishnah does not accord with Rabbi Akiva because it was taught in a brisa. It's forbidden to wear kilayim to evade customs, but Rabbi Shimon says in the name of Rabbi Akiva, it is actually permitted to wear kilayim to evade customs. So the opinions are understandable regarding the issue of wearing kilayim without the intent to enjoy the benefit of the clothing as a protection from the elements, because you're wearing 10 other layers, guys, or 9 other layers. You don't need the clothing. You don't need it. It's not a need. But what they disagree of is over the following point. Because the master, Rabbi Akiva, holds that something that is unintended is permitted, meaning if there's a secondary benefit, but that's not the primary benefit, it's okay. It's not a problem. Whereas the Tana Kamma of our particular Mishnah holds that something that is unintended is forbidden, meaning if you're getting a fringe benefit, it doesn't matter. It's not because you're getting a benefit that it's forbidden. You can't wear kilayim whether there's a benefit or not. That's the issue. But as far as evading customs is concerned, both sides agree that that is permitted. And the question that the Gemara asks is, how can you be allowed to evade taxes or custom duties with the garment? Because Shmuel said the law of the kingdom is the law, meaning in the law of the country that you have to pay taxes. Why? And we learned that you have to follow the law of the country. Why are you allowed to not pay taxes? So the Gemara answers it's only in certain cases where Rav Chanina Bar Kahana said in the name of Shmuel, the reference is to a custom collector who has no limit to the amount he collects. In other words, he's lost his agency from the king because he's not collecting the amount the king stipulated and is keeping the majority of the money, or is not taxing fairly, so he no longer enjoys the protection of the king to use his stamp of authority. Well, in the Academy of Rav Yanai, they said it's a guy that's not even collecting on behalf of the king, but he has appointed himself without the authority of the king. And we said it's like being a BMW agent. If you are breaking or contravening any of the laws of the agency by selling pirate parts or selling the parts for more than the stipulated rates that agents are allowed to sell it, your guarantees are not worth anything because you're not backed up by BMW. And therefore, you don't enjoy the benefits of the brand that BMW will give, and you cannot buy from that dealership because you're not going to get any sort of protection. But the issue here isn't an issue of evading legal taxes or taxes that are unfair. You only have to pay taxes that are fair. It's an issue of, can you get the second-hand benefit, like coming now, Kev, with kilayim, if you're not getting benefit from the wearing because you've got 9 other layers of clothing. In other words, if it's prohibited, is it because it's the sake of kilayim in and of itself, whether there's a benefit, or if there's no longer benefit, can you wear kilayim? And the prohibition is only if a benefit kicks into play, the primary benefit of keeping you warm. All right, guys, I'm done.
A comment here, Damon.
Yeah.
So there was this tax imposed on Jews, which probably was discriminatory in the Middle Ages. I mean, it was very primitive and backward and barbaric, as we know. So if wearing kilayim identified someone as a Jew and they didn't want to, so for that temporary moment, they identified as a non-Jew. And then they, as according to contemporary thought, so the person for a temporary period identified as a non-Jew to avoid paying tax maybe it wasn't such a bad thing because it wasn't a fair tax. It was
So there is a
only
separate
imposed on Jews.
prohibition that you can't hide your brick miller, or there's certain things that you can't
No,
do.
but well, was that the only thing? But
No,
I
no,
mean,
no. But I'm
the
saying the
people,
concept there is based on the
yeah,
fact that maybe it's prohibited to hide your Jewishness. It's something we have to go. Look, today you could just identify as a non-Jew in your mind, and you'd be not Jewish, and the world would accept it. And other mental illnesses, you could say I'm a
yes,
non-Jewish female instead of a Jewish male, but you can't say you're a
non-binary
non-Jewish.
female. Yes,
Exactly, but you can't say you're a non-Jewish black female because all of a sudden, when you change the color, that's accepted as
yeah.
a mental illness because you can't change color, but you can change genders. It's all very confusing.
Stand now, Gavin. I would identify as a non-binary number. Gavin,
He's on mute.
I call you. You're on mute, Gavin. You could be a binary number. I'd be a non-binary number.
Yeah. So I'll be a 0.
Are you guys at odds or what?
You can just call me 0. All right.
Arthur, you can identify as a humanoid.
Arthur's
The first one on Earth, but
Not an Android. I'll identify as an Android because I use an Android phone. Okay. Even though I'm a humanoid.
okay. Okay.
that actually is funny.
Yeah.